Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. My name is Andrew Claudio, aka GMAC. It is time to preview another Knicks matchup, this time on Monday night against the Memphis Grizzlies, an impressive Memphis Grizzlies team where, look, we love our numbers here at Knicks Film School. We love to go to Knicks math class, as it would take it. The Grizzlies are 31-15. They're third in the Western Conference. And then what I like to do when I do prep for my show, I just realized you probably couldn't see any of that. I like to write down everything that the opponent is like top 5 in or top 10 in. So this is a list of all the things the Grizzlies are top 7 in the NBA. 5th in offense, 6th in defense, 4th in net rating, 2nd in offensive and overall rebound percentage, 5th in effective field goal percentage, 4th in true shooting, 1st in pace, 3rd in opponent field goal percentage, 5th in opponent three-point percentage, 5th in opponent turnovers per game, 4th in opponent defensive rebounds per game, 7th in three-point percentage, 5th in field goal percentage, 3rd in offensive rebounds a game, 3rd in blocks per game, 1st in free throw attempts per game. The 5-man starting lineup that they've landed on, which features 2 rookies, Jalen Wells and Zach Edey, and the 3 mainstays, John Morant, Des Bane, and Jaren Jackson Jr., are plus 43 on the season in 237 possessions played. That is the highest, as you can imagine, highest plus minus amongst lineups this year with at least 200 possessions played on the year. And yet, you might look a little deeper and see a team that has the second most difficult schedule in the league. There's a lot of correlations with the Knicks and what the Knicks have done this year in that they're both going to be around 30 wins, or really going to be. They are 30-plus win teams. The Knicks 30-16, the Grizzlies 31-15. And they're 2 fan bases that are, waiting for signature wins throughout the regular season. So it'd be a very interesting matchup for both teams that are looking for a playoff preview. And joining me to talk about a potential finals matchup, we might as well call it that, from Grizz 901, the Grizz 901 live podcast on the Bluff City network. We could check out their YouTube channel, the Bluff City YouTube channel. And I got to shout it out also from Coach and Company, hosted by Jonathan Coachman, Mr. Daniel Greer. Dan, welcome back to Knicks Film School, sir.
Andrew, listen, it's a pleasure to be here. Like what you're doing here is fun, right? It's fresh, it's different. And so always a fan of yours forever, but also a fan of this show. The chat's already popping. I love that part of it. The live is what I thrive on. So most shows that I do, everything is live. And so the interaction back and forth with the audience is my favorite because, it allows us to kind of just talk freely and just kind of figure out what they're thinking, because whatever they're thinking is probably what we're trying to think as well. So I love it.
Well, I'm excited to have you back. And I really want to dive into what has made this Grizzlies team so spectacular, or maybe, a bit boring in how good they are. I know that they had a rough season last year in all the games missed and all the injuries that were hit, but this was a perennial 50-win team for the 2 previous seasons. The most impressive thing from my perspective is that they've really remade themselves with 2 rookies in the mix and leaning on 2 rookies to be part of a team that's probably headed for 55, 56 wins on the season. But I can understand if a fan base that, experienced some playoff success and some what ifs may be looking forward to the postseason. So you tell me, how are the vibes in Memphis? Is it just like happy to be back to winning basketball, or is there a bit of a look ahead going on?
So this is the 2-part question, right? So I'm going to split it up. One, there's 2 trains of thought. One is my train of thought, and honestly, more the OG's train of thought of, hey, listen, we don't care about the regular season. This isn't what we're interested in. As long as we're in the top 6, preferably, honestly, the top 3 is what we're kind of want to end up in. But how we get there, we don't really care. As long as we're somewhat healthy, because the playoffs is kind of where we expect this team to be. We expect this team to at least win a series, probably get to the second. And then from there, we'll kind of see how it goes. But that's kind of where most of the OGs of the Grizzlies fans kind of land. But then there's a new side. And it's kind of the side that I know a lot of these bigger markets probably get more than we get, but we're a small town team. We're family, right? Well, now we have the dark side of Grizz Twitter, which we've deemed as Grizzleverse, because it's a different universe. And so they live on every game. They live on every play, every substitution, every rotation. And so it's the coaches crucify most of the time if a guy's left off too long or a minute here and there. It's very, very weird. But I know we can all agree on is one thing is this game tonight should be big just because it's kind of like a measuring stick game because the Knicks are good. They're very, very good. And they're very, well coached in my opinion. And so I'm expecting we're kind of see what the Grizzlies are all about. Are they actually a good team or are they a pretender? And so that's what I want to see tonight and see exactly how good they are against the Knicks.
Daniel, I'm just going to tell you now, you just, with your answer there, proof of concept for the pregame pod, because it's about perspective. I like to go outside of the Knicks bubble and see how other people feel about the Knicks, as well as compared to how I might feel about their team,
right,
how the fan base actually feels about their team. I want to try and get the outsider's perspective. And for you to say that the Knicks are good, they're well coached, and then there's a dark side of Grizzlies Twitter that complains about the coach and a minute, two are there and live and die in every game. My goodness, the opposites attract going on right now. And that's exactly the Knicks experience, where the Knicks are very good. They're 30-16 on pace for 50 plus wins. I think they're well coached. I recognize it's a marathon, not a sprint. I recognize that we'll probably find out like how good this team is in April. And then there are Knicks fans that live in, I don't even know what the dark side of Knicks Twitter would be. It's just like Staten Island. Like that's what we should just call it, like the dark side of New York. And I don't even know where we could, but like, I know where they come from. There's a lot of angst toward the head coach and the minutes police and his lack of flexibility when it comes to, or patience, I should say, when it comes to the rookies. But I mean, just look at the very high complex offense that they're running this year and how successful, how efficient it's been. That, of course, I think they're doing something right. And then I read off all these different numbers to you, everything that the Grizzlies are top 7 in on the season. That sounds like a well-coached team, especially when 2 rookies are largely playing their minutes. So, I mean, I actually want to ask about Grizzleverse for a second. Like, what's their biggest complaint about a team that's 31-15, 5th best record in the NBA and trending toward 55, 56 wins?
The biggest thing is always going to be the coach with them. They do not like Taylor Jenkins, and Taylor Jenkins, all in all, he's a good coach. Okay, I would not say he's a great coach, but he kind of raises your floor in a sense. You need floor raisers, but you also need ceiling raisers. And so I think he's a floor raiser, such as if you just talked about the 2 rookies. You should not be starting a team with 2 rookies, if you're going to be good, but you're 31-15 on this season. So I think he is a floor raiser. The offense does help in that. But the biggest complaint has to be Taylor Jenkins. And you'll see tonight that they are playing. I think they're averaging 3 more minutes in the month of January than they have the rest of the season combined. So they're playing a little bit more minutes for the big 3, which is the Ja, Jaren, and Bane. But besides that, he kind of doesn't let them play over 30 to 32 minutes. And that's the opposite of your coach, who probably would like to play 48 minutes, but we got to give a guy a breather here and there for maybe a minute or 2. So it gets them
if you
up
have
to.
to.
Yeah, if you have to. Like, that's only if like the sky is the right color that day. So I agree that it is very, very much 2 sides of thinking, but I think both fan bases are one and the same. I think there's a side that loves the coach or thinks he's okay, thinks he's fine. There's another side that hates the coach, and anything that he does, good or bad, is they're very critical of it. And so, but yes, the coaching is by far what everybody complains about on the dark side.
I've come to realize this is year 3 of me doing the pregame pod. This is every fan base. Like when I've talked to Miami Heat fans or Miami Heat content creators that are like, yeah, they're so mad at Spo right now. Really? Like one of the best coaches of all time that like single-handed, like you have a thing called Heat culture because you turn cashiers into 2-way players into all-stars. Like, what are we doing at this point? But like, obviously there is some justifiable criticism at times. But it's just funny how fans react to certain things. Look, I'm impressed by the Grizzlies. I'll just say from my perspective, I'm looking forward to a game tonight where the Knicks will get a good litmus test at home, couple days rest as well. I pitched this to you in the rundown, but off air, that I want to know, like, if you could rank like the biggest reasons for their success this year, but you can't say they're healthy. Like it isn't like just, oh, they got their guys back. Like, what would you say is like the number one reason that they're the 31-15 and have all those high rankings so far this year?
Yeah, I think everybody could look at it and say, if your team's healthy, then you're probably okay, as long as you're not the Charlotte Hornets, right? Or another team that's just not good, just talent-wise.
Brooklyn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Brooklyn.
Them.
Brooklyn's not good. Even though the Grizzlies have lost 2 games to Brooklyn this year, we don't want to talk
Really?
about it. Let's not discuss that. I'm sorry
Will
I brought
not
it up.
discuss it. I'm sorry.
But besides of health, this team has been very good. And so I'm going to, looking at how this team, and I do have 3 rankings on this. And the first one is Jaren Jackson Jr. And I know a lot of people are very familiar in New York with Jaren, but Jaren Jackson Jr. has played probably the best player for the Grizzlies this season. And that's not to take a shot at Ja. That's just the fact that he has been healthy, but he's also been consistent. And that's really what you need. And you'll see tonight that a lot of people who've missed out on seeing Jaren this year, Jaren is very good at being on the ball. His usage rate is much higher. I think it's 12% higher than it was the last few seasons. But his usage rate is up because they're getting the ball to him early and letting him create. And because of that, it's allowed the team to kind of flourish a little bit more. And so I like how he's doing and how he's playing. And I expect them to kind of continue on in the trajectory of Jaren because, as y'all know, Jaren Jackson Sr. Was good in his own right. So have you seen a lot of Jaren this season?
I've seen enough to know you're right. My buddies over at the Game Theory podcast, Sam Vecini and Bryce Simon, both had him on their second team All-NBA through midway through the season. And it's a premium on defense. I've obviously been very satisfied with what I've seen from Karl Anthony Towns this year, but there are some shortcomings on the defensive end, even if the metrics actually might tell you that they're better defensively when he's on the floor. Every time you watch Jaren Jackson, it's like a solid rim protector that can guard 1 through 5 at times. Look, it's the matchup I'm most curious about tonight because Cat has been able to take advantage of centers or just like bigger players like that. Whether it be Rudy Gobert one-on-one, where because the Knicks had certain lineups out there that Gobert couldn't potentially like be on Josh Hart or be on another player. No, you have to guard Cat, and if you put Cat in space, that's kind of game over. I'm curious what that matchup does tonight. So I definitely should be named an all-star next week. That's for sure. And we'll see. Like, he might get into the MVP conversation, especially if they're trending toward 55, 56 wins this season.
Yeah. Well, and the Knicks, as our guy Big Cheesy says in the chat, like the Knicks are good. And you're going to see that on the back of Karl Anthony Towns, but also the Grizzlies are good. You'll see that on the back of Jaren. But looking at like what I would rank the second, and this kind of goes with 3, so we'll just keep it as just 2 kind of ranking system. But I look at the off season, and it has been, marred by very much a suspension with Ja. And then obviously you had the issues that he's, dumb decisions that we'll say that he's made. And then the health, right? So all of that combined, they've had a very tumultuous kind of couple seasons. But in all of that, the last few seasons, the Grizzlies consistently draft well. And because they draft well, we're seeing guys like G.G. Jackson Jr., Vince Williams, who hasn't played but 1 game and got hurt in that 1 game when he came back. But now you're seeing 2 rookies in Jalen Wells, but also Zach Edey. These are guys that all combined, I believe, are roughly like $12 million in total of money. Like, I know that y'all don't realize what $12 million can get you because you pay everybody 30-ish million a year. But we have guys that are playing, very big minutes for us that are paying, getting paid peanuts in a sense. But I think the front office as a whole, just how they're getting guys and finding the right guys at the right time allows you to still pay your big 3, but also maybe take a swing. And I think that's what the Grizzlies do in this during the season, the trade season. Is they make a swing and try to find one more piece to the puzzle. I don't know if they're just going to kind of say, hey, we're good with GG. Vince is returning. Marcus Smart's returning as well. We'll get him healthy. Or do they make the decision and say, hey, let's get rid of Marcus and let's trade that in for see if we can get somebody that better fits with this system. So I think all in all, besides the coaching, being a floor raiser and helping these young guys, I do think that this front office has done a really good job of finding key players that can contribute.
Well, the fascinating thing for me when you look at like you alluded to it, that they're doing a lot of this with a lot on the backs and on the minutes of two rookies
Right.
contributing. That almost for other franchises or historically in the NBA, that means you have some runway here, that it's not about this season. While, you know, I say that, and your big three, Ja Morant, Desmond, Jaren Jackson, they're only getting older. And you never know how many bites at the apple you're gonna get. So have
Right.
your expectations, or really more so yours and the fan base's expectations, changed at all with the fact that there are two rookies coming along here, that even if they don't win this year or win it, I mean, I don't know what
Yeah.
the end game is here, but like you have a couple bites at it, or I mean, you tell me what does a disappointing ending to the
Mm.
season look like to you?
I'd say a first round loss is
Okay.
disappointing. At this point, with this good of a record, I think you have to understand that you're probably getting into the playoffs, even though the West is loaded. Like you could have some injuries and be out of the playoffs like within a blink of an eye, just because it's so good. But I do think that you're expecting your team to make the playoffs. I think a first round exit gets your coach fired, and I've said that on our Grizz 901 post game show so many times. Of when is the freak out moment for the front office? Because I think the front office is lock and step with the head coach, saying, "Hey, we want to develop these guys. We want to sacrifice maybe a loss here and there because we want to get everybody minutes as we lead up to the playoffs." So I think that is kind of what everybody agrees upon, is first round exit would be a complete and utter failure. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is, like, you get to the second round. If you get bounced in the second round, you're one of the final 8 teams in the entire association. I think that makes you feel good enough. But in all honesty, what the Grizzlies have went through, I don't know if that's really going to make you feel good. I think you really need to find a way to get to the Western Conference Championship to really say this was a successful season. I think the second round is fine. I wouldn't be upset, but I'm not happy about it either. So I think you're very much either, 3 different tiers there of whether you're excited or not excited, or just pissed off just in general. But I think the expectations overall with having these two rookies, it dampens my expectations, if I have to be honest, because you can't start two rookies in a playoff series and expect them to show up and not be rookies at times. And that really, at times, comment, that could actually lose you games. It could lose you multiple games if they're not ready.
Well, so that actually leads to my next question: the trade deadline and what they might do. The two rookies, they are starting Zach Edey and Jalen Wells. Understanding that the playoffs are a thing, and you don't know how a rookie is going to react until he actually plays some playoff minutes. Is there thought of getting a center like Kevin Danishevsky? I'll put your super chat up now. He was at Memphis against Minnesota a week ago. Do you see Memphis as a potential Mitchell Robinson landing spot to hedge for Edey development, or is Zach Edey too good to head for? I'll just kind of spin this question into like I don't think Mitchell Robinson is who you trade for, depending on what he can be health wise the rest of the season. But is there thought to get another center in here to hedge against like the playoff warts that a rookie might have? So that way, if you have to go to Marcus Smart in big playoff minutes or that center, you're at least set up for a postseason run.
Yeah, looking through the Grizzlies contracts, you don't have a lot of guys that are making money that you would be willing to trade. Like one of them is Brandon Clark, who I think the team really loves and enjoys, and he's showing his versatility, right? But then the rest of the guys don't make enough, or they're the big three. So there's very simple of who is able to be traded. Luke Kennard, who's playing exceptional basketball right now. Now, I don't know if that's the trade season itis that he's catching that might be saying, "Hey, I don't want to go anywhere," because he does love Memphis. His family loves Memphis. And so he really wants to be here, but he's on a 1-year deal expiring. But then also you have Marcus Smart, who you mentioned. Marcus Smart is the key trade piece to this team. I think he matches up and aligns with this franchise terribly. I don't think he's a good leader. I don't think he's the right size next to Ja Morant. I don't think he can do enough that really nobody else on this team can't do. That's the reason that Jalen Wells has been starting for pretty much the entire season, is because he's kind of stepped up and kind of taken the brass ring. And so if I'm looking at this team, I'm looking for a 2 or a 3 that, just kind of a big wing is what I would look for. So I know a lot of conversations about the Cam Johnson, which a lot of people have said that, he'd be a good fit. He'd be a good fit on a basketball court. So every team wants him. Everybody should understand that he would be a good enough fit. But it's all about money. He fits with the Grizzlies. They can make that make sense with coming off of at least Marcus Smart, who they could then flip, eventually this season or next season for more pieces. And so you can kind of keep his addition by subtraction going if you're the Nets. But the Grizzlies, they could also get a center because I don't think Zach Edey should play more than 14 to 16 minutes in a playoff game. He's not ready. He's very much a guy that you need for the perfect matchup. And I think tonight's matchup, Cat will absolutely cook the big guy because there's no way that he can go out on the perimeter and actually be a good enough defender, in my opinion. But I think they can upgrade as a starting center position, whether that's a guy like Bobby Portis. Mitchell Robinson has been a guy that they've, I guess, been in talks a little bit about. But overall, I do think that they either find a big wing or a starting center vet that they can trust. I don't know if that vet part kind of includes Mitchell Robinson, though.
We'll talk about how these teams match up in just a second, but there's one question. You mentioned who you might trade for, a 2 or a 3. There's one that's been in the news lately that he's unhappy with his current situation. That's made things a bit unpleasant down in Miami. And I'll put Busy's question. What would you be willing to give up for Jimmy Butler? Are you even interested in the Jimmy Butler experience and what that could potentially do for, you talk about getting ceiling raisers on the team. As much as I hate to admit it, he has raised the Miami Heat ceiling over the years. What he is at 35, 36 years old, maybe a different question, but you tell me, what is your interest in Jimmy Butler and what would you give up for him?
All right. So if you're offering me pissed off Jimmy that wants to everything needs to be on fire. Like I am going scorched earth because I hate Miami and I want to show them they should have not given up on me and not given me an extra contract. And I'm willing to put all that effort into Memphis and make them really good. I want that Jimmy. I want that Jimmy 10 times out of 10. The problem is Jimmy worried about his next contract so much that he worries about winning. And so at that point, I can't take that Jimmy. And I don't think the Grizzlies, there's a lot of been surrounding. The Grizzlies made an offer for Jimmy. The Heat liked the offer. The Heat had went to Jimmy's people and said, hey, this is the offer we're looking at. This is what we're thinking. And Jimmy's like, hey, they're not going to give me a contract. And I don't know how the rest of the season is going to go. So if the season doesn't go good and I don't fit good with that system, I could not make as much money. The only place that wants to offer him is Phoenix. And so that's why he wants to go to Phoenix, because he can get that next contract. Not that he hates the city of Memphis like people have speculated. Not that he hates the team. Yeah, it's all about money. And so he wants to worry about the next 3 or 4 years. So if you give me the player that wants to play and not worry about money, I want that guy 10 times out of 10, and I would trade up a lot to get him, which I don't think you have to do. But I don't think that he's in that mindset right now. But I think he can be. I really think he's worried about his money long-term more than anything.
Which, we've seen that play out a lot, whether it be James Harden, whether it be Kyrie Irving. Really the last 2 big ask outs, it seems, were those 2 big ones. It's why the Jalen Brunson extension this summer is just so unprecedented, that he very much looked ahead to what was best for the team and signed an early max contract that allowed them to then go out and get Karl Anthony Towns. And they're probably going to extend Mikal Bridges this offseason at a pretty significant contract because they can afford to pay him after what they ended up paying Jalen Brunson. Yeah, I'm curious how the situation ends. Actually, Kevin Danishevsky has a good question. Speaking of Mikal Bridges, shout out to Kevin for the super chat. How close was Memphis to getting either OG Anunoby or Mikal Bridges, 2 big trades the Knicks made over the last year?
I think they were the finalists in both, and I think they wanted Bridges more than OG. OG's fine. I don't think he has the 3-point shot that they really wanted and coveted overall, even though the defense was good for OG, and everybody, in Knicks country sees that. But I think that they were definitely the finalists in both. And Bridges, they were offering up whatever they wanted for the most part. It's just the prospects and really what they were looking at within Brooklyn is kind of what they probably had in mind more coming from the Knicks. But overall, why the Brooklyn would trade with New York, it makes zero sense. I don't get it, what they're thinking. I don't think that they care. And I think that's what's the problem with them owning a franchise. And that's why they suck so bad. But I just think overall, I don't understand why they would trade with their sister. Like, hey, no, I'm trying to beat you. I don't need you within miles apart from me, just beating me every year. That's stupid. I don't get it.
I think first of all Brooklyn Nets slander is welcome here on this program.
Okay,
so let it all out. I think look, my read on it is the Knicks offered 5 picks in a swap, and I don't know if Memphis was offering 5 picks in a swap. At the end of the day, the Knicks emptied out the treasure chest that they had been assembling over the years, and them being able to acquire OG Anunoby without trading a first round pick, make the midseason trade the deadline trade for Bogdanovich and Alec Burks without sending out a first round pick, allowed them to just send out picks and draft capital to Brooklyn, who had just gotten their pick back because of the trade they made with Houston. And look, as much as I agree with you that it shocked me, especially in the moment that the Knicks and Nets made their first trade since 1983. I understand if you can't turn down that type of pick package, because at least it's a direction. Like, you're not just this middling team that's going to be around the 15th, 16th pick, maybe the play-in. Now you're tanking. Now you've got Cooper Flag. You've got this treasure chest of assets, whether it's the Phoenix picks and now the Knicks picks. You can go forward with that. However, I'm always here to take 10 seconds to laugh at the Nets when it's possible. Hold on, Jonathan Macri with a super chat. Please come back on the pod for our Nets preview. Maybe you'll be my guest when the Knicks play the Nets in the last game of the season, and we'll just take the entire time to laugh at the Nets and how bad their season potentially was. So speaking of this matchup, and again, the correlations between these two teams, I went looking for things the Grizzlies are bad at, and they're second most in turnovers per game. So they do turn the ball over a ton, it looks like. They're 29th in opponent free throw attempts per game. So they do, I guess, because they're more aggressive on defense, they foul a ton, especially if you get the right night. The Knicks are a team, whether it be Jalen Brunson, whether it be Karl-Anthony Towns, they like to drive a ton. Knicks may end up getting to the line a bit. I would take the over on Jalen Brunson free throw attempts in this game. But the biggest thing is the schedule, at least for me. And I mean, you spoke to it earlier that the fan base seems to be looking at that too, that they've played one of the easier schedules this season against 500 teams or better. The Grizzlies are 12-10. The Knicks 12-11. Against 500, under 500 teams, the Grizzlies are 19-15. The Knicks 18-15. They're literally going through the same thing. Now, the Grizzlies have the second most difficult schedule. The Knicks have the fourth most difficult schedule remaining. All that to say, both teams could use a competitive game and, more importantly, a signature win against one of these top 6 30-plus win teams. So I say all of that. I set the table. I now ask you, what about the Knicks scares you the most coming into this matchup?
I think it's Karl-Anthony Towns by far, just because of the way he can stretch a little bit. Just by watching a lot of the Knicks this season and betting on them, honestly, because I like the way that they're consistent and you can get good numbers and you know how many minutes they're going to get, which is the opposite of the Grizzlies. And so that does help you when you're looking at consistency. But just looking at how they play, it still confuses me with how they seem that they're not fast paced, but they do score a lot. But their offense is very simple to me. When I look at it, it's very much driven by Jalen Brunson, and there is a lot of kick outs and an extra, like, kind of a hockey assist, a kick over to the corner 3, which is a lot of what happens. But I just think that the matchup overall is very good. I'm looking at who's going to guard Jalen Brunson, because Ja Morant has very much stepped up his defensive ability this season. I think he's kind of taken that upon his shoulder. So does he get the Brunson matchup because he does match up better, or does he slide over to an OG potentially and maybe guard him? Because you don't want to put him Mikal, because Mikal can back you down a little bit better. And so at that point, where do you put Jalen Wells? If you don't put Jalen Wells, because he is the Grizzlies' best defender right now, do you slide him to OG, or can you send him out to Mikal Bridges, who ends up staying outside more than honestly than Jalen Brunson gets into the paint and gets that floater? And so I'm curious as how they match that up. I think Bane gets the least of the three in the overall matchups. And so that's what I'm looking for, because in the end of the day, I think Jaren finds his way to Karl-Anthony Towns at some point through the game, and he plays him one-on-one. Because Edey, like I've said in the very beginning of the show, I think Edey gets cooked by Cat. And that's because he's stretching him out, a little pump fake, and then once you go by the ogre, I think you have free run to the rim at that point.
Yeah, so a couple things. The being able to bet on the Knicks because of their consistency. Shout out to Daniel over at T Squared Social, the sports bar that we partner with. He's been like just cleaning up, I should say, on these Josh Hart overs, because he just, whether it be Josh Hart over on rebounds, Josh Hart over points, rebounds, and assists. Josh Hart had a triple-double 2 days ago. And it's just like by the third quarter, okay, Josh is getting his 11 rebounds in this game. Because he doesn't come out of games, the guy, Energizer Bunny, and playing for Tom Thibodeau, so it's a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
How have the Grizzlies looked against 5-out teams? Obviously, the Knicks are going to play 5-out. I would imagine if I know Jenkins, he would start. I actually think he'd start Edey on Josh Hart, and then just start Jaren Jackson on Cat to begin the game, and let that be the matchup. Wow. And then let Edey kind of roam as a second line of defense. Am I reading that correctly, or do you think this will be Edey on Cat to start the game?
I think Edey will start on Cat just because I don't think they get too, kind of crazy with it. But I do love the idea of that, because Josh Hart, he can knock down some 3-pointers, right, if he's left open, but that's not what he wants to do. So two trains of thought. Like at that point, do you try to force Josh Hart to make those 3-point shots and maybe put Edey on him and say, hey, listen, we're going to play off of you. And if you want to beat us, then chunk them up, buddy. But if for some reason you want to go the other way around and then make Jaren the roamer, because at that point you then have Edey, who's a big matchup for, even if you do a pick and roll, you still have his size to deal with, because he's a big guy. So any pick and roll, any switch at all, I think he can guard enough on the perimeter. It's just if he gets beat. So at that point, Jaren, his best ability is being a roamer. And I don't know if that's Edey's as much. And so I'm curious if they go with the opposite of what you were saying, and just that allows, the same thing, but allows Jaren to be the roamer instead of Edey.
It's interesting that it's similar to what the Cavs do, where Mobley is your 4. And then, like in this case, Jared Allen could start on Cat, and then, right, that Mobley's your roamer, your second line of defense. The Timberwolves continue to be the example to me of how it started. When the Knicks played Minnesota in Minnesota, it started out that Julius Randle was guarding Cat and Gobert was your roamer. It's the way they guarded Jokic in the playoffs last year. And that first quarter, it was like, oh, the Timberwolves are going to win by 15, by 20. And then second quarter happened, and Randall left the game, and Naz Reid got a couple fouls, and the Knicks went to a lineup, because Josh Hart didn't play that game, a lineup that forced Gobert to guard him in space, and it was barbecue chicken for the rest of the night. Cat had 40 and 20 in that game. So, that's always been the example of, like, to your point, there have been teams that have put their center on Josh Hart and forced him to make threes. And the beautiful thing about Josh Hart is once you force him to start making threes, he starts making threes. Just whether it be the playoffs or whether it be during the regular season, he just like, oh, okay, so I guess I'll just start hitting threes. So I think that'll be interesting. The last question, as far as this matchup is concerned, I read all the accolades and where they rank, where they rank in the stats so far this season. And they're a top 5 defense. They're good in 3-point percentage, good in field goal percentage as far as opponent on both, enforcing turnovers and blocking shots and defensive rebounding. When it's looked the worst, like, how have teams beaten this really good defense? What's been the consistent, Achilles heel when it's worked against the Grizzlies this year?
Yeah, and this is exactly what the New York Knicks can do. And so that was going to be my question back to you in the opposite way. And so I do want to end it on that one. But the way you beat the Grizzlies is you just muddy it up and you make them have to be a half-court offense. Because The Grizzlies want to be the Ferrari, right? They want to get the ball and they want to go. There is just all, it's all gas, no brakes. I think that's what the cool kids say. Maybe not, but you want to get up and down, and it creates a little chaos, and it allows them to kind of free flow, because this offense is the style that everybody shoots, everybody scores. It doesn't matter who scores. It doesn't matter who the best player is. And that's the way they want to play. If the Grizzlies win by 20 points, it's because honestly, the Knicks were shooting shots, not getting any offensive rebounds, and the Grizzlies were getting the ball and going. And you can't stop that. Like, realistically, like, the Grizzlies, that they're the best team when they can get up and down the court the fastest. The problem is if you're getting the ball out of the bucket, then you're having to run a slower pace offense. The defense is already set up. And at that point, if you can kind of make them be the half court offense, if you can somewhat have a good matchup, which I think Karl-Anthony Towns is for Jaren Jackson Jr., if that's the way they go, then I don't think that the Grizzlies have much of a shot against the team. It's going to be very much an uphill battle, because Jaren is their creator. I think the Knicks can do good enough job against Ja Morant, even though Ja is electric when he wants to be. He likes to pass more this year, and I'm telling you, if you haven't seen Ja Morant this year, he's an amazing player. Sometimes he's in a good mood, sometimes he's in a bad mood. You don't know what you're getting sometimes, but if you get a good mood Ja who's looking to score, there might not be a better player in the game, but sometimes you get the good mood Ja that wants to pass, and at that point, that's great, but that's not really what you want him to be realistically. And so it depends on a lot of different guys, but I'm curious how tonight looks just overall, if they can slow him down enough. So on the other hand, how in the world do the Grizzlies beat the Knicks? Like, is there a recipe for success to go against them?
Well, you hit it on the rebounds. When the Knicks have lost, either the shots are not falling, they've really prioritized the first shot now. Like, this is the old Knicks team with Randall and Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein. The Knicks were getting 2, 3, 4 possessions or chance at a shot because of the offensive rebounding, like top of the league in offensive rebounds, which is, again, just to say this again about the Grizzlies, the most impressive thing is that they're toward the top in offensive rebounds and efficiency, which speaks to the transition that you're talking about. First percentile in transition frequency and points per play. When the Knicks have lost, teams are taking away Cat as a stretch 5, as a roamer. He's got a sprained thumb at the moment, so he actually hasn't been the greatest 3-point shooter, honestly, of the last like 2 weeks. It's been a recent development, but as if OG Anunoby's having an off shooting night, if Mikal Bridges is having an off shooting night, if Jalen Brunson's having an off shooting night, which we've seen consistently over the last month, that's been how. And this is where the Tom Thibodeau portion of it comes into play as well, because of the minutes that have been accrued. You might be able to tire him out by the fourth quarter. And they'll just be some tired legs that down the stretch. Now, look, if the Knicks are hitting shots early on, and if we're in the second quarter, and they clearly got it going, which they got a couple days off. They had 3 days off going into the Saturday game against Sacramento and scored 143 points, and it was just very clear. Oh, this is a team that both had some time off and had some time to practice. It sets up a recipe for success. Now, the other part I have to mention is the defense. The Knicks play a very consistent drop coverage. They've played a little more aggressive the last couple games, and like, I don't know if you would be able to tell me like how the Grizzlies have fared against drop, but because of Cat and his limitations as a rim protector, they play a very conservative drop coverage that sometimes it forces him to have like 2 feet in the paint on pick and roll coverage, which leads to a floater, which leads to some 3-point pick and pops at times. But if you miss, he's like there for the rebounds. Well, he's got 14 rebounds a game. That first shot, though, it may be unimpeded to the rim. So we'll see if they're a bit more aggressive tonight against a team that does turn the ball over a ton. So that would be my thought going into this. Look, I'm impressed by where they rank in a lot of these things throughout the league, the Grizzlies, and I'm ready for this litmus test. And it sounds to me like the Grizzlies fans and whether it be the Grizzleverse or the more level-headed fans like yourself, are just excited to see them play a good team and see where they rank against them. We had a couple questions for people watching live just to give you an idea, and I'm not trying to call people out, I promise you, but this is like some of the things we get. So Stanley Man, Memphis is for real. Knicks at this point are pretenders until we get a healthy Mitch and a wing. I mean, you get that about the Grizzlies sometimes 100%. In your evaluations, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of where you're at. Like you feel like your team is pretending because you're watching your team every single night. Like you see the bad, and I promise, like if you're living with your spouse, right, you see the bad. But people that are outside in the public, they see them at a certain way, and they think, "Oh my God, she's the hottest, she's the coolest, she's the nicest." Yeah, well, because you're living with them, you see some of the bad as well, and so sometimes you kind of got to take a step back and realize, like, hey, I probably just need to mute some of these people, which I do every game. But what I honestly look at is I try to take a step back from every game and realize, like, hey, what is the record? What's the goal of your franchise? If your goal is of your franchise to win every game and to be a good regular season game, then honestly, you're going to be living and dying on every game. But if it's not, sometimes losses suck. But the best losses can be actually the best thing for your team and your coach. If your team's winning all the time in the regular season, your coach never has a chance to correct anything and make some changes. And so you want those losses and you want the embarrassment because they're humans too. And so I get feeling that way, whatever your name was, but
Stanley.
still.
Yeah, Stanley's been a long time contributor to us. So,
your team is awesome. Your team is really good. We'll see it tonight.
Well, the other part of this is the Tom Thibodeau doesn't play rookies part of it, and we look across the aisle, and it's the Grizzlies playing 2 rookies in BV87 44P. That's the name on the screen. Do our rookies get sent to Westchester tonight so they don't see other rookies playing and starting? I respect the spirit of this. There was a point where I wanted Tyler Kolek to get some minutes this year. They've finally started to play their 9-man rotation. I've been fine with the minutes for like a week or so now. Josh Hart and Mikal Bridges, it's really just like an experiment at this point, how many minutes they can play. OG is really the one that I'm most concerned about because he's a guy that has never a guy that has an injury history and has never really showed that he could play the Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart level of minutes consistently. Yeah. And he's even mentioned when you talk to people around the team, like he's the one that the most has said, like, I'm exhausted. By the end of games, I'm like walking up the court with how exhausted I am. Wow. But we'll see. I guess the question here is that you've alluded to it, like the risk of playing 2 rookies. Yeah. What is it like to watch them flourish, but then have to deal with rookie mistakes at times?
So these 2 rookies have very much been consistent all season. And I know I'm not big on Zach Edey. I think you're going to see that his style of play is completely different than when he was at Purdue. It's really, back to the basket, post up, whatever. Well, now that they see that he can do that, and everybody knows that as a National Player of the Year, he can do that. But this is the NBA. It's not college basketball. So what they're trying to do is get him out more on the perimeter to allow him to shoot a 3-pointer or 2 that he wants to. And he's done a decent job at it. But it's also to kind of make him run through some actions and kind of run some people off of him because it does set a good screen, but it also allows a little bit more of a freedom of movement. Plus, Ja needs the paint to be more open. He just honestly does. And that's why I didn't agree with them getting Zach Edey, is because of, the clogging of the paint that a big guy does. And so overall, Zach Edey's been fine. Jalen Wells has been great. I will say, if you're betting, I don't know who Jalen Wells is guarding tonight. If he stays out of foul trouble, look at the number of whoever's point total that he's guarding. It will go under as long as he doesn't get in foul trouble. He's held Cat under games, Luka under games. He's held guys all season under their point total on a consistent basis. He's longer than you think he is because of, he looks like he's very skinny, very frail. But the dude is long. He plays exceptional defense. It's almost like he's face guarding, if anybody knows what that means, which he doesn't allow them to catch the ball. And so that will be a problem with Jalen Brunson. But you also have G.G. Jackson, who's just getting back from injury, who's exceptional. He's a young guy, second-year player. Santi Aldama, who could be coming back tonight. He's a younger player that a lot of people don't know about. And so there are a lot of guys that people will not be familiar with that are coming off the bench that'll be very good. And so I think a lot of people will be impressed by the bench. It's all about, do they play too much? And that's where the criticism of Taylor Jenkins, the coach, comes in.
That's the completely different world. Your bench plays too much. What are you talking about? The Knicks have 1,500 possessions from their starting five this season. Yeah, the minutes police Josh Hart alluded to it. I think there is a conversation to be had about the minutes for sure. I don't watch basketball with a stopwatch. Is the difference there? That I'm not like, all right, he's been in too long. Go on, sit Mikal Bridges from the game, which is ironic because the last comment / question from Busy, who was early? Was it and who was late today? GMAC or DG? Busy, I'm happy to tell you, both of us were early, and we started at 11:58 today, so we were both early. And as far as I'm concerned, nobody was late. Busy. So the daily comment that I get at the beginning, why is the show late? Claudio, always late. What's wrong with you? So unprofessional. Can't get me on that today. I made sure to start early just for you, Busy. You're welcome. On behalf of DG and myself, you're welcome, Busy. I'm sorry to bother you because you're apparently busy. Daniel, it is always great to talk to you. I love the work you do, whether it be with Jonathan Coachman or Grizz 901. Everybody, please go subscribe to their channel. He's about to say where it is, but the Bluff City YouTube channel with an outstanding intro video that gives you like a tour of the city as well. And I'll let you plug it before you get out of here. Let the fine folks at home know where they can find you and all of your work.
Yes, so if you want to watch, I know you're going to watch the Knicks post-game show, but if you don't want to do that live and you want to come to us, feel free. But I'd rather you go to your Knicks people and have fun with them live. Afterwards, come hear what we have to say. We're going to be up for about an hour. As soon as the buzzer sounds, we hit the go live button. But you can find us over at Bluff City Media. We'll be going live with them. We're Grizz 901. And if you're looking for any betting advice, if you look for somebody that has a little fun, like, so we give out our plays, but that's not all we care about. We care about kind of smartening up the fans, but also having some fun. You can find us over at Coaching Company. We're on YouTube, so you can find us there. But we're also on the Stadium app, but Stadium, which is viewed in millions of homes. So if you have TV that, I know Amazon Prime has Stadium, which is just a channel. It's very simple, but it's everywhere. And so we're live there at 10 a.m. Eastern with Coaching Company Monday through Friday.
I warn you, and this will probably mean the Knicks will have won. Knicks fans like to go invade the opponent's YouTube channel.
I love it.
After games. Shout out to the Sixth Man Show down in Orlando. Shout out to the Miami Heat Beat down in Miami. Shout out to the rights to Ricky Sanchez. My God, what the war that Philadelphia became during the postseason between the rights to Ricky Sanchez and an RB Philly take. So should the Knicks win tonight, expect some company from Knicks fans. That'll be screening our post-game show and yours tonight. So we'll see what happens. Daniel, it's always great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. And thank you to everybody for tuning in to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dug it, please head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and a review. If you're not subscribed to the channel, less than 800 away from 20,000. Please subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family. Really helps us out. A reminder, speaking of T-Squared Social, we will be there on this Saturday when the Knicks take on the Los Angeles Lakers. Be doing some trivia ahead of time. Haven't figured out if it'll be just an in-house thing or whether we'll be doing something that turns into content, but be there. We're giving away one of the Fanatics boxes, a mystery box with like a $500 value. So you'll get to open it live in front of everybody. So make sure you're in the building for all the fun things that we'll be doing on Saturday for the Knicks against the Lakers. I will be back tomorrow. Actually, we're doing the pregame pod a day early when since the Knicks take on the Nuggets on Wednesday. We'll be doing the pregame pod tomorrow on Tuesday around 3 p.m. Eastern. So join me for that. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll speak with you soon. Peace.